Welcome to the lands of science fiction stories. I wish you a pleasant listening experience.
High Counselor Zaxiath of the Galactic Confederation reclined uneasily in his anti-gravity throne, his sleek, metallic limbs twitching with barely contained stress. The emergency meeting had been called so hastily that several council members were still emerging from their stasis pods, oozing fluids, or adjusting their neural modulators. The air in the grand hall buzzed with confused whispers, clicks, and growls, an amalgamation of 1,000 alien languages attempting to understand the crisis at hand. Zaxiath cleared his throat, his voice modulator struggling to maintain its composure. "Esteemed council members, I bring you grim news," he began, his four eyes narrowing with restrained anxiety. "We face an unprecedented threat to galactic stability." Gasps, growls, and slurping noises filled the chamber. Ambassador Zorkrax, a gelatinous mass of purple goo, quivered violently. Is it the Vlorn Collective? Have they finally perfected their mind control tech? No, Zaxiath replied gravely. It is far worse. The threat is from the humans. Chaos erupted. Council members shouted, tentacles flailed, mandibles clicked. A few even fainted, their unconscious forms floating in the low-gravity environment. It took several moments for order to be restored, and when the commotion finally died down, all eyes and sensory stalks turned to Zaxiath. "Humans?" rasped General Thalzar, her mandibles clicking in disbelief. "Those primitive Deathworlders? What could they possibly do to threaten the Confederation?" Zaxiath motioned toward the holographic screen behind him. "Perhaps it is best if I show you," he said, his voice trembling with dread. "This footage was captured by one of our deep cover agents on Earth." The screen flickered to life, showing a quaint human dwelling. The camera zoomed in on a small child, barely old enough to walk, sitting on the floor, holding something in its tiny hands. It was a cube-shaped device, brightly colored, innocuous-looking at first glance. But to the assembled council, it was anything but. Ambassador Zorkrax let out a gurgling shriek. "By the stars, that's the cosmic nullifier." The entire chamber recoiled in horror. The cosmic nullifier was a device of unspeakable power, capable of erasing entire star systems from existence with a single activation. It had been lost eons ago, hidden by the precursors to prevent its misuse. But now it was in the hands of a human child. Why isn't it vaporizing the child? Zorkrax croaked, his gelatinous form rippling with confusion. Where is the devastation? The collapse of reality? The council watched in stunned silence as the child twisted and turned the sections of the cube with casual ease, as though it were a mere plaything. Every turn of the cube sent a ripple of panic through the council members, who flinched collectively, expecting the universe to unravel at any moment. They have turned the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy into a toy," Zaxiath said grimly. "Our analysts believe they call it a Rubik's Cube." A wave of disbelief washed over the chamber. General Thalzar's exoskeleton clattered loudly. This cannot be. How could they have possibly figured out how to activate it? And why are they using it like this? "They haven't activated it, General," Zaxiath replied. "But the very fact that they possess it, and seem to have no fear of it, is terrifying enough. Imagine what could happen if they do figure it out. Entire galaxies could be wiped out by accident." The council fell into a panicked murmur, their minds racing with the implications. The humans were a known anomaly, their death world origins making them resilient, unpredictable, and dangerously curious. But this was a catastrophe waiting to happen. "We must act swiftly," Zaxiath declared, slamming one of his metal appendages against the armrest of his throne. "We cannot allow the humans to hold such power. We must retrieve the nullifier by any means necessary." "But how?" Ambassador Zorkrax asked, his form trembling. "If we approach them openly, they may become suspicious. They might even discover the nullifier's true power." General Thalzar stood tall, her sharp mandibles clicking in anticipation. "We could send an elite strike force, infiltrate their society, and retrieve the nullifier before they even know it's gone." Zaxiath nodded, his eyes glowing with approval. "A covert operation, then. We will deploy our best agents to Earth, infiltrate their society, and retrieve the nullifier. It must be done swiftly and discreetly. The fate of the galaxy depends on it. The chamber buzzed with agreement, but as the council members began to settle into their plans, a new question arose. Ambassador Zorkrax, still visibly shaken, raised one trembling pseudopod. And, if they activate it while we're trying to steal it? A heavy silence fell over the chamber once again. Zaxiath glanced back at the holographic screen, where the human child continued to twist and turn the cosmic nullifier in her hands. She looked frustrated, banging the cube against the floor as if trying to force it into alignment. But then, with a pout, she tossed it aside, her attention diverted to a plush toy nearby. The council let out a collective sigh of relief. For now, the galaxy was safe. Let's hope, Zaxiath muttered under his breath, that their curiosity doesn't destroy us all before we can intervene. The mood in the council chamber was still tense as plans began to take shape. High Counselor Zaxiath stared at the screen, watching the small human child move away from the cosmic nullifier, now abandoned on the floor like a forgotten toy. Yet, the threat was far from over. If they didn't act swiftly, the next twist of that cube could spell the end for entire star systems. We must assemble a team immediately, Zaxiath ordered, his voice modulator tightening to convey his urgency. General Thalzar, I leave this operation in your capable claws. Pick our finest covert operatives and deploy them to Earth. This is a mission of utmost discretion. Failure is not an option. General Thalzar's exoskeleton rattled in agreement. Consider it done, High Counselor. We will send our elite unit, the Shadow Serpents. They've infiltrated Deathworlds before, and no human security system will stand in their way. Zaxiath nodded approvingly. Ensure that they understand the severity of this mission. Not only must they retrieve the cosmic nullifier, but under no circumstances should they reveal themselves to the humans. The consequences of exposure could be catastrophic. The council began to disperse, their thoughts still reeling from the shocking revelation. As the doors of the chamber closed behind the last of the members, Zaxiath reclined in his anti-gravity throne, the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. He gazed at the fading image of the human child on the holographic display and whispered, what kind of species could treat the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy as a mere puzzle? General Thalzar wasted no time. Within hours, she had assembled her elite team, a group of beings so dangerous that even their own kind feared them. The Shadow Serpents were a covert force trained to operate in the most hostile environments the galaxy had to offer. They were experts in infiltration, subterfuge, and assassination, skills that would be necessary to slip unnoticed into the human world. Thalzar stood in front of her squad, her mandibles clicking in rhythm as she spoke. Shadow Serpents, listen carefully. We are about to embark on one of the most dangerous and delicate missions of your careers. We are going to Earth, the death world of the humans, and we will be retrieving an object of unimaginable power. The cosmic nullifier. The squad members exchanged glances, their exoskeletal bodies tensing in anticipation. The cosmic nullifier was legendary, a weapon so powerful that its very existence had been erased from most records. Yet, here it was, lost on Earth and now in the hands of the galaxy's most unpredictable species. I don't need to tell you what will happen if the humans figure out how to activate it, Thalzar continued. The Deathworlders may be primitive, but they are resourceful and dangerous in their own way. Underestimate them, and you will not live to regret it. One of the operatives, a towering reptilian creature named Dranzath, raised his clawed hand. General, how do we know the humans won't activate the nullifier while we're attempting to retrieve it? Thalzar's mandibles clacked in frustration. We don't, she admitted, her tone dark. But that is a risk we have no choice but to take. Our operatives on Earth have informed us that the device is currently in the possession of a young human female, a child. She has no idea what she's holding, but that doesn't make the situation any less dangerous. One wrong twist of that cube, and we could all be vaporized. The squad members shifted uncomfortably, but none of them hesitated. They had faced death countless times before. The prospect of total annihilation was just another challenge. Get in, retrieve the nullifier, and get out, Thalzar instructed. No one should even know you were there. If you are detected, it will trigger an intergalactic incident, and we cannot afford that. Stealth is your priority." The shadow serpents saluted in unison, their claws and tendrils moving with military precision. The mission was set. They would leave at dawn, traveling in cloaked ships capable of slipping past Earth's primitive security systems. As Thalzar watched her team prepare for the mission, she couldn't shake the feeling of dread that crept along her armored spine. Deathworlders were unpredictable, and this would be no ordinary retrieval mission. There was something about the humans, a recklessness, a raw and untempered force, that made even the most advanced species in the galaxy uneasy. 2 days later, the streets of the quiet suburban neighborhood were bathed in the pale light of Earth's moon as the cloaked ship descended silently into the backyard of a small human residence. Inside, the shadow serpents were calm and collected, their breathing barely a whisper in the dimly lit cabin. They had been briefed extensively on human culture and behaviors, though nothing could have prepared them for the reality of this chaotic world. "Target confirmed," whispered Dranzath, his slitted eyes locked on the house. Through the ship sensors, they could see the human child fast asleep in her bed, the cosmic nullifier resting innocuously on a shelf beside her toys. "The device is within reach. Proceed with caution," Thalzar's voice came through the comms. "Retrieve it quickly and avoid detection at all costs." Dranzath and 2 of his fellow operatives exited the ship, their cloaking fields shimmering as they approached the house. To any human watching, they would have been invisible, a blur of refracted light. They moved silently, scaling the side of the building with ease and slipping through an open window. The bedroom was small and cluttered with human toys, most of which the operatives had no reference for. A strange stuffed creature with a long neck and spots sat beside the bed, its black button eyes staring blankly into the room. "Focus," Dranzath hissed to his team as they approached the shelf. "The nullifier is all that matters." He reached out a clawed hand, carefully taking hold of the cube. It felt lighter than expected, just a collection of plastic pieces, twisted and scrambled. And yet, the power within it was undeniable. His instincts screamed at him to drop it, to run far away from this dangerous object. But he had a mission. Suddenly, the human child stirred in her sleep. One of the operatives froze, his eyes darting toward her small, fragile form. "Move!" Dranzath snapped in a whisper, his heart pounding in his chest. "We're out of time." Just as they prepared to make their escape, a strange sound filled the room, a soft, clicking noise. Dranzath's blood ran cold as he realized that the sound was coming from the cube. One of the operatives had unintentionally twisted it while holding it. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The room was bathed in silence, broken only by the gentle breathing of the sleeping child. Dranzath's heart thundered in his chest. Had they triggered the device? Had they just doomed the galaxy? This were far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy had realized. But nothing happened. No star system collapsed, no reality warping explosion. The cube remained inert in his hands, seemingly no different than before. Relief washed over him, but only for a moment. "Get out," he ordered, clutching the nullifier tightly. "Now." Without another word, the operatives moved swiftly back toward the window, slipping into the night as quickly as they had come. They had the nullifier, and for now, the galaxy was safe. But as Dranzath glanced back at the sleeping child one last time, he couldn't shake the feeling that the humans, those unpredictable Deathworlder. As the shadow serpent's cloaked ship ascended into Earth's atmosphere, the tension inside the cabin was palpable. Dranzath clutched the cosmic nullifier in his claws, his gaze fixed on the intricate patterns of color that adorned the cube. The device was secure, the mission a success, or so it seemed. But the air inside the ship was heavy with unease, as though the very nature of the object they carried was warping reality around them. "Status report," General Thalzar's voice crackled through the comms. "Mission accomplished, General," Dranzath replied, his voice steady, though his grip on the cube tightened. "The cosmic nullifier has been retrieved without incident." "Good," Thalzar responded, her mandibles clicking in approval. "Return to base immediately. We'll begin analyzing the device as soon as you arrive. We cannot afford any mistakes." But something felt off. Dranzath couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong, terribly wrong. His eyes were drawn to the cube again. It looked so harmless, so benign, and yet, his instincts screamed at him to be cautious. He had seen firsthand the chaotic potential of humans, and he wasn't convinced that they had escaped Earth unscathed. The ship hurtled through the stars, breaking free from Earth's gravity and entering the vast, cold expanse of space. But as they passed the outer edge of the planet's atmosphere, the cube in Dranzath's hand emitted a faint hum, almost imperceptible. His blood ran cold as the sound grew louder, filling the cabin with an eerie resonance. "Did anyone else hear that?" one of the operatives whispered, his voice trembling. Before Dranzath could respond, the cube began to glow, a soft, pulsating light that shifted with every beat. The operatives stared in horror as the colors on the cube rearranged themselves, twisting and turning of their own accord. "No!" Dranzath muttered, backing away as the nullifier continued its strange, autonomous transformation. "This can't be happening." In an instant, the entire ship was flooded with light. The operatives screamed as reality itself seemed to bend and warp around them, the walls of the ship twisting like liquid metal. Dranzath felt a sharp pain in his skull, as though his brain was being torn apart by a force he couldn't comprehend. The light grew brighter, searing his vision, and the air around him seemed to crackle with energy. "General!" Dranzath shouted into his comms, his voice barely audible over the roar of the energy surging from the cube. "The nullifier, it's activating." Thalzar's response was drowned out by the overwhelming cacophony of noise and light. Dranzath dropped the cube, but it floated in midair, spinning faster and faster, its colors blurring into a brilliant white. The ship's systems began to malfunction, warning lights flashing as the craft lurched violently. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the light vanished. The ship was still. The operatives were motionless, their breaths ragged as they tried to comprehend what had just happened. The cube floated gently to the ground, its colors once again aligned in a perfect, completed pattern. Dranzath stared at it, his heart racing. What did it do?" he whispered, his voice barely audible in the silence. The ship's sensors beeped softly, signaling a sudden course correction. Dranzath glanced at the display, his eyes widening in shock. "No, this isn't right," he muttered, frantically checking the coordinates. The ship wasn't heading back to the Confederation base. It was heading toward Earth. "We're being pulled back," one of the operatives shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "The cube, it's dragging us back." The ship's thrusters fired in vain, but the gravitational pull around the nullifier was too strong. It was as if the cube itself had altered the fabric of space, manipulating the ship's trajectory with a force none of them could resist. "Brace for re-entry," Dranzath barked, gripping his seat as the ship began its descent. The atmosphere around them glowed red-hot as they plunged back toward the planet's surface, the hull groaning under the pressure. There was no time to react, no way to alter their course. The ship slammed into Earth's atmosphere, falling faster and faster, until the crash landing was sudden and violent. The ship skidded across the ground, tearing through a forest before finally coming to a stop in a remote, desolate area. Smoke billowed from the wreckage, and inside, the shadow serpents struggled to regain their senses. Dranzath coughed, pulling himself from the wreckage. His body ached, but he was alive. Around him, the other operatives were stirring, groaning in pain. They had survived, but only just. "Is everyone intact?" Dranzath rasped, pulling himself to his feet. The other operatives nodded weakly, but their attention was drawn to the one thing that remained untouched by the crash, the cosmic nullifier. It floated once again, its colors shifting lazily, as if mocking them. "We need to destroy it," one of the operatives whispered, his voice tinged with desperation. "This thing is too dangerous. We can't let it exist." Dranzath hesitated. Destroying the nullifier would be a massive risk. It could trigger a cataclysmic event that would wipe out not just the surrounding area, but potentially the entire planet, or worse. But leaving it intact was equally dangerous. The humans had no idea what they held in their hands, and now the shadow serpents had failed in their mission. Before Dranzath could make a decision, the sound of footsteps echoed through the trees. He spun around, his claws at the ready, but what he saw sent a chill down his spine. Humans. A group of them, approaching cautiously from the distance. They must have been drawn by the crash. Dranzatha's mind raced. There was no time to escape, no time to hide. The humans would see the ship, and worse, they would see the cube.